McCarthy Insurance Group, serving the community for over 70 years. For home, farm, motor, life, health and business insurance, log on to mig.ie or free phone 1800 50 11 11. Probably your best call in 2024. Charles McCarthy Insurance is trading as McCarthy Insurance Group, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Real people, real opinions, Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
As travel gets back to pre-pandemic levels, the number of people going abroad for dental and cosmetics work are also going up. And thanks in no small part to the fact that the rip-off Ireland is alive and well. And also because we are a bit more image conscious than we've ever been before. And a few months back, we had Dr. David Lucy on the show. He's an Irish trained doctor with 19 years experience and a background in both surgery and oncology as well. So he is actually a doctor. And he is also the Beautydoc, with premises in Dublin city centre, where he provides cosmetic surgery like Botox, fillers, and helps those who have gone abroad for treatments but had not so many good results. And he joins me on the line. And by the way, if you want to text or WhatsApp, if you've been abroad, got the teeth done in Turkey, all that, or got the hair done somewhere else, or the boobs done somewhere else, or you had a problem, or you didn't have a problem, I want to hear from you. The number is 087 188 0008. You can WhatsApp or text. Let us know what your experience has been if you did get surgery or dental or hair or whatever it was done abroad. Dr. David Lucy, the Beauty Doc, how are you?
You know, lovely to join you. Certainly, this is an increasing problem.
Okay.
And, there's a recent study by an Irish doctor, Dr. Cullen, which showed that when you look at bariatric surgery, which is surgery for weight loss, they reckon that 8 to 10 patients per week are presenting in Irish hospitals with complications of bariatric surgery, which is carried out abroad.
Now, what is that surgery? Is that the surgery where they get the balloon put inside them?
Like stomach bypasses.
Okay.
Like, this kind of like weight loss surgery where essentially
so they're sewing up their stomach,
restricting the size or the emptying of the stomach to basically reduce appetite. People feel fuller quickly, so they, tend to lose weight. But there are significant complications that can arise from that. And one of the great problems, of course, is that if you run into serious problems and you've returned home or vice versa, the surgeon has come to Ireland and has returned to their home country, there's a sizable chance that, in fact, you're not fit to travel. And if you present then to the Irish Health Service, then really the only person who really knows what's gone on is the person who's operated. Quite often in that scenario, they're not going to have the medical notes or the full details. And so
it's like getting your car fixed somewhere and having a problem with it. It's like kind of getting your car fixed somewhere, have a problem, and then bring it back to a different mechanic. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
But it depends. It kind of the risk increases with the risk of surgery. So that something like bariatric surgery, which says kind of weight loss surgery, has a fairly high complication rate as opposed to something like hair transplantation. Now, I'm involved in that as a medical director, but certainly we'll get people coming back and they, are very unhappy, and then they come to us, they're unhappy, they're not replying to the messages, they refuse to see them, and then we're like, okay, do we want to send this out as a brand? We're gonna, it's not like we can fix that. In fact, we'd have to almost charge them more to kind of rectify it and redo it. So it is an ongoing problem, and it's an increasing problem.
But do you understand why people are desperate and they do it abroad? Because it's attractive, of course. The price is attractive and people are attracted by price. As long as and most people will have a look online and they see a fancy clinic with lovely shiny floors and it looks lovely, it looks great. It may not be like that when you get over there.
And some of them are fine and a lot of people have a good experience. But, the fact of the matter is that if people shop around, what they're quoted when they go abroad to the likes of Turkey and Greece are the highest prices here. But in fact, a lot of kind of clinics, and I'm an aesthetic doctor, I'm not a cosmetic surgeon, but a lot of clinics have adapted to that. And in fact, if they look around, there's not actually a huge price differential if you include like going there or bringing your partner or their recuperation time or going back for follow-up visits.
But I mean, we've seen comparisons, David. When let's talk about teeth, for example. Turkey is the famous place. They call them the Turkey teeth. And we've seen comparisons where in Ireland here to get, a set of implants, for example, or whatever it is, for a full set. There was one guy in the paper there did a comparison recently, and it was an opinion piece, I think, in the Irish Independent. And I think he paid or he was asked to pay something like 24,000 or 25,000 here, and I don't know what he got done, to be honest with you, but he went up north and got them done for half the price. Now, that's only up the road, literally across the border.
I suppose there is a kind of.
Why is there such a disparity?
Well,
why is there such a disparity in the prices?
I think
sometimes
it's more regulated here, but also, for the kind of person of journalism, for instance, if you look at hair transplantation, you could, there are places that will charge 20,000 here, and there are places that will charge 4,000 here. So, you go to Turkey, it might cost 2,500, 3,000, but then there's extra costs, aligned with that. And certainly if you have a problem, there are extra costs again. So I think that there's, a bit of a selection bias in terms of, there is a real disparity, I think, particularly in dentistry, but, you have to look at what is the cost if you get it wrong and they're not prepared to correct that. Because not only do you have your original problem, and if actually you have to have that problem taken out. It's a bit like trying to get a builder to take over, a kind of a failed project. It's not going to be cheaper. In fact, it's going to be more expensive to undo that work and more or less start again from the roots up, and no pun intended, and have that kind of designed and redone. But at the serious end of the scale, you can have serious repercussions from that, because I said you're going into probably a not very receptive audience, saying I've had this done somewhere else. These guys aren't taking my calls, and now I want this rectified, but I'm a layperson. I'm not exactly sure what I've had done.
Yeah, and I don't have the money to go private, so I'm going to end up having to go into a hospital or into a public setting. And I did speak to a dentist recently, and he said the amount of people that come to him who've had work done abroad, and they come to him, they say, "Can you fix these? They're all crooked, or there's something wrong with them, or whatever. They're falling back out again." And he goes, "Not my problem." And he said, "I just don't get involved." He said, "It's not my problem." And he says, "I can't fix somebody else's work. I just can't do it, and I won't do it."
It's a roulette wheel now, and it's like. So, a lot of people come back and they're happy, and they're the stories you see. And then equally, the people who would present to me are people who are deeply unhappy, and there's its own selection bias with that, in that maybe the same clinic has made many people happy. But, the bottom line is that if you run into serious complication, you want to be able to access whoever has done that procedure in a very timely manner. And, if you go abroad, you really often don't have that option.
What are the most common procedures at the moment? We mentioned hair transplants and teeth already, and we also mentioned, obviously, people who are eating too much and they feel they need to get their stomach size reduced, which I think is quite extreme, by the way, to deal with the problem. I think it's like a sledgehammer to tackle a nut, but however, they would be reasonably common. But what are the other common things that people are getting done?
The World College of Surgeons brought out a paper last year on the best practices in cosmetic surgery. And if you look at the top kind of 5 procedures worldwide, there'd be breast augmentation, liposuction, eyelid surgery, rhinoplasty, which is basically nose jobs, and abdominoplasty, which is generally kind of like, I suppose, commonly known as a tummy tuck.
So is that removing spare skin if you've lost weight?
Yes, or to remove some skin and the fat beneath it, and then essentially take out an ellipse of tissue and then sew it as a straight line in essence.
Right, okay.
So that you generally, it's kind of along those lines. So they were the most common things, differ between men and women. So for men, it would be like eyelid surgery, what we call a blepharoplasty, where, again, this is not my realm. I do injectables. I'm not a plastic surgeon, but these would be eyelid surgery. So
sorry for interrupting. What is eyelid surgery? When you get a bit removed, so your eyelids, you look like your eyes are a bit more open.
Let's say heavy eyelids, right? So you have a lot of soft tissue. Again, I mean, similar in a fashion to abdominoplasty, you would take out an ellipse of skin, and then you would sew it a straight line. So you would take out some of the excess tissue and then re-sew it so there's no longer an excess tissue. So even during the pandemic, so this data is from 2020. So they reckon that 250,000 men worldwide had eyelid surgery.
Wow.
A similar number, 225,000 had liposuction. About 210,000 had surgery for gynecomastia, so for excess kind of breast tissue, and it's actually like a kind of
man boobs.
Exactly, man boobs, and then 210,000 as well, again for nose jobs, rhinoplasty, and about 90,000 had ear surgery. They were the most popular procedures for men during the pandemic. So that's actually down. So you're talking about that's about 10%, 11% down on what would have been the case before, and probably with all the navel gazing that's happened in the last 3 years, you'd imagine there's probably gone up a lot more than that 11%. And so it certainly is a huge booming industry. But there are consequences to this. And I said, if you run into problems and you go abroad, that is problematic. So
do you get people coming into you because you're doing the injectables, obviously, and you're registered? You're registered there. So
in terms of price, but in hair transplantation, I would certainly have people come in, and they're unhappy with their procedures, and when they're unhappy, quite often, what was the kind of happy clappy 5-star service suddenly dissipates. And
what goes wrong with hair transplants? I'm reasonably familiar, with hair transplants and all that. So I'm assuming what happens is they're promised 6,000 implants or 3,000 implants. They get them done and half them fall back out again. Is that normally the problem?
It's a combination thing. So to give you kind of like a 20-second run hair transplant, the hair at the back of the head is not hormonally sensitive to the hair at the front of the head.
It's glandular hair, yes.
So you can quite often take the hairs out of the back of the head and implant them kind of sapling-like in the front of the head. But if you take them out too roughly, you'll break the hairs so they don't implant properly, they don't take. But also, you scar the back of the head. So if you come in, let's say you're in your late 20s, let's say you're 50% bald on top of your head, you can put in those transplanted hairs and they will survive, right? But the other 50% over the next 10 years may disappear through normal balding process. And so you need to retransplant. But when you go back to take it out to harvest these hairs in the back of the head, because of the scarring, it can't be done. And so they can end up with something that's a lot kind of odder looking. People are used to bald heads, but that is this kind of halfway house, which can be quite odd looking and quite, upsetting to people, particularly to younger men.
Yes.
And also there are kind of cultural differences. Quite often, in Turkey, they have the trend or the vogue is for a lower hairline, and then they come back and the friends are slagging them all for having kind of
too much hair,
kind of Lego head, and so then it's like, what do you do with them? And we have a real dilemma because we feel sorry for them.
Can you take them back out again?
Yeah, you'd have to take them out and put them back in, and they've spent their money, and that's it's a big cost to them. And we're kind of we're gonna like half fix this, send it out as our brand, and this guy's in front of us flying, and he doesn't have the cash to pay what we normally charge, and it's a difficult dilemma for us, but it's as I said, there is a dichotomous thing in that we don't see the people who are happy. There are people who are happy, but people just need to be aware that there are risks involved.
So what happens when a woman comes in to you and she says, I went after the girl around the corner who was advertising she does fillers. I got my lips done, and now look at me. I'm like Mick Jagger. Can you take it back out again? Can you take the stuff back out of their lips or back out of their face?
It's odd you just asked me that, because I probably do more than anyone in the country. You can use an enzyme to reverse lip filler, and I do that quite a lot. I'm one of the few people who will do it in other people's procedures. But there is a risk of serious allergy with that, which is why it has to be done by a doctor or a dentist. But dentists,
the girl around the corner can't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the great problem in the industry, is that it's not regulated. Like, we're regulated because, I'm... So
can I, by the way, sorry David for interrupting. So could I just advertise tomorrow on Facebook that I'm doing lip fillers and that I'm doing Botox and buy the stuff and just do it? Yeah.
You can do it in the morning now, and you can decide, having done it on your system mid-afternoon, that you open a school of fillers and issue certificates. And it's not even illegal to that. You probably will be able to get insurance on those certificates. That is how unregulated it is.
That's
and
bonkers.
If you get into a problem and you can blind someone, you can cause all sorts of problems, and you get into problems, the enzyme that you use to reverse that or to dissolve that, it's illegal for you to use that because you are not a dentist or a doctor. So you, in fact, are not licensed to do that. But it's the only kind of regulation is the kind of €9 a meal regulation, which is Botox and hyaluronidase, which is the enzyme used to break this down. It's a prescribed product. And so the only people who prescribe things in this country are dentists and doctors, and that is very strictly regulated by the HPRA, who are the kind of drug regulation authority. So it is a massive problem. It's an increasing problem, and there's not a great deal being done about it, to be honest.
Okay, in your line of work, and you've been in this business a long time now, you've 19 years experience and a background in both surgery and oncology as well. What's the weirdest thing somebody's asked you to do? Put you on the spot there, have I?
I don't think we're past the watershed hour. I had, so I dissolved a lot of filler, as I said, and I had a guy ring me one afternoon, and he was like, "I hear you dissolve filler," and I guess I do, and I have that kind of a standard fee.
I know where we're going with this. Go on, go on.
Yeah, so there is such a procedure, generally in Russia and the US, and he said, "Well, I've had filler on my penis," so it's like, are you free this afternoon? So I was kind of gotten up, and I was like,
your curiosity was actually getting to you now at this stage.
Well, exactly. You're kind of like, it's Monday afternoon. It's not so busy, and it's like, so I was like, fine. And he was like, and I would start, and I was like, what's €200? And I immediately thought to myself, this should really have a higher price. There should be a special price for this. And yeah, I mean, he hopped up on the table, and I've never seen anything like it. But the man had like pain threshold of I don't know what, but he didn't even wince. But probably one of the other ones.
And what does the filler do? Does it make it thicker? I suppose was that the purpose of the filler? Is it to make it bigger or thicker, not longer? Obviously,
it's generally made of hyaluronic acid, which is the natural component of skin, which is viscous. It's thick, right? So you add volume. It takes the body a long time to break it down, depending where it is. More kind of movement, so it lifts in like a 6 to 9 months out of it. If you're somewhere that doesn't move a lot, let's say like the jaw, it might be like 1 to 2 years. So that's the kind of basis of it.
Right.
By
the way, are those kind of things popular? Are they still as like our breast implants? We went through a phase in the kind of 2000s.
Oh, geez, I mean, they're all on the increase, and they're all on the increase. I think partly as a result of the huge surge in kind of social media and the focus on image, particularly amongst young people, but also it's become normalized. That people were ashamed of it. And you find this actually, there's a kind of Dublin-centric thing. Like, we had this conversation today with someone who was in to me from Mayo, and she was like, in Mayo, there's still kind of like, she was in a parallel industry, in a beauty industry, and she was saying, she says her customers like, oh my God, I can't believe you admit that. Whereas I think in Dublin, you will find that like, our city areas, you'll find that people are now, it's just kind of normal. And then if you go to like London or Australia, you find again that everyone's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to have to get my hair cut and get my Botox.
And by the way, when the whole scare thing came out there, every 5 or 6 years, there's a kind of scare about companies who provided breast implants, and there's a recall, which is bizarre. There's a recall because they were leaking, or there was, and I'm not too sure even if silicone is used. I know there's different types of silicones. There's one that more like a liquid, one more like a fruit pastille type of thing, jellyish, and then you have the saline or saline ones, which are more common in the United States. I mean, what is the common breast implant now? Is it saline or is it silicone? And is there still a scare about it?
Now they've gone away. Like, silicone's not really using anything anymore. I mean, there was kind of like a big hoo-ha there a couple of years ago about these French implants.
PIP, and the PIP ones, yeah.
Exactly. And so there was a whole recall on them. So, some of the long-term consequences are not known. I mean, something like, hyaluronic acid or Botox will be around forever. And they're considered very, very safe, once they're administered in the correct manner. But there's always that element. But there is, but there's such a demand that in a kind of paradoxical way, there's such a huge throughput, and also we have a kind of I suppose a lag time safety, because generally it starts with South Korea is probably, or Russia are probably the leaders, and then it goes to the likes of Brazil or Australia, and then it comes to the UK. So a bit like when you're going to your country cousins in the 80s, and from Dublin, you saw the movies from 9 months ago. We are kind of getting this phenomenon that. So
at least it's been well and truly tested, is what you're saying, yeah.
Be the guinea pigs for at least half a decade before the paddies are kind of privy to. So there's a little bit of
and that whole French the PIP thing, and I know back in the early part of 2000 there was a whole scare about silicone as well. And implants and all that kind of stuff. That didn't scare people away at all. No, it didn't. Sure didn't. You're going to say no, it didn't. Of course.
But it is. When you look at the figures, it is actually a small subset of people who are affected. I'm not trying to belittle that, but it's like your breast implants in particular, through legitimate, like through kind of, oncological procedures like breast cancer, et cetera, et cetera. There's such a volume of them done. And honestly, if you look at breast cancer or these kind of things, if you look at who the fundraisers for these are quite predominantly middle-aged women. And so the data for those, so the funding for those kind of programs and that kind of research is abundant. And so the data tends to be very, very solid for those. And also there's a big kind of slap on the wrist after that. So there's a very kind of robust process by which, these products have to go through. Now,
by the way, is it just a doctor? I mean, when a woman goes to get her breasts done or her nose done or whatever it is, I'm assuming it's a specific field. Is it just, are they medical doctors or are they just registered cosmetic surgeons? What's the difference?
So this is a very interesting point because, each year I have to kind of you have to re-register with American Cancer, pay your dues, et cetera, and there is no category for an aesthetic doctor, but there's also no category for a cosmetic doctor. So a cosmetic surgeon. So in fact, I've done some surgical exams. I am not a surgeon. I've been a surgeon for many years. So it's there is no issue with me calling myself a cosmetic surgeon because the medical council don't recognize that category. So it's up to me to define it. Now, in terms of surgical procedure, there certainly are regulations around that, but that's one of the issues is that in essence, there's kind of a little bit of snobbery around it. And so they kind of we don't recognize that. But the college surgeons themselves have, in this report, this best practice in cosmetic surgery, which we brought out last year, it's not really even defined by them.
So what do they look? Do surgeons, medical surgeons like heart surgeons and brain surgeons and neurologists, do they look down on you guys as being, those lads? do they look down on you guys?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my 20-year medical school reading. That's why I was thinking of someone saying, someone's going to be listening to this. But it's definitely, it's like leaving the Amish to go to aesthetic medicine. But, because it is, it's something that's somewhat evidence-based, but a lot of it is based on your own experience because there's no specialty. And one of the difficulties is that it's quite subjective, like what's beautiful. So if I kind of go for a natural look and I say that's great and someone's happy, then someone goes down the road and they come out with these kind of Barbie lifts and they're delighted and they're really confident and they think they're great. Who's right? Well, both of them are right. So it's how do you then say, I have the Dr. Lucy Beautydoc technique and that's the best and that's what has to go on paper? I mean, it's quite difficult to regulate in that fashion. But what other countries have done, I've taken a pragmatic approach. Like you look at Canada and Australia and said, look, if you're a nurse, if you're a dentist, if you're a doctor, you can do this because you have to do your kind of homework to keep up your license, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a kind of self-regulation in that because even if you look at the products, they do some trial to say, I have Niall's elixir and I have David's elixir. And it's like, well, my elixir is far superior to Niall's elixir. And I was like, no, mine's far superior to David's. Let's see tests. Like, why would you test? Mine's the best,
I'm looking at some of the questions, by the way.
It's Colonel Gaddafi, and they said the BBC asked him after 40 years, actually, why would you have a democratic election? You've been in power for 40 years. He said, why would I have an election? It's direct democracy. People want me.
I'm looking at okay. So I've encouraged people to send in some questions. By the way, if anybody wants any questions answered,
I'm
not going to say David's going to answer them all for you, right? But he'll try his best. Dr. David Lucy, who's his clinic is in St. William Street.
If they want to send me a question, absolutely no problem.
Yeah, the Beautydoc. But they're sending in questions here, and they can if they want to. 087 188 0008. You can WhatsApp us, or indeed if you want to go to his Instagram or whatever it is, the Beautydoc. Anyway, so I'm looking here. Somebody says, how can I get my boobs to get bigger without implants? Is there a breast filler?
That is a good question. So you can, again, I have to qualify this saying that I'm not a plastic surgeon. I'm a cytotoxic and I do injectables. But, you can get a kind of a lipotransfer where you basically take fat, primarily from the backside or from the belly, et cetera, et cetera. You can have that injected. And
if they have small boobs, they're most likely going to have a small bum as well, aren't they, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can eat donuts. I mean, that's quite a way. But it's but you can have a fat transfer, which would be a way of doing that. Now, if you look at this big hoo-ha with Madonna recently, where people were criticizing her appearance, and you have to say Madonna's the lady's like about 68. I mean, she looks quite good for her age, I think. But some people have speculated that is because she had a fat transfer instead of fillers.
But that's a mental health. I mean, David, I think we all have to accept that when you get to that point that Madonna's at, I think, people need intervention. It's a mental health issue then at that stage, isn't it?
Well, again, it's subjective. I mean, if she's happy, then she's happy. But, a lot of people say that's because they took fat, maybe from backside, which is different kind of properties to the fat in your face. And it has more of a propensity to put on weight. So if you put on a bit of weight, that's what some people explain the phenomenon by. But, it's, you see this, it's quite interesting actually if you go to an aesthetic conference with aesthetic doctors. So as like an aesthetic doctor, a 46-year-old actor, like I'm not, even if I look like a bulldog, people don't expect me to get treatments. Whereas women in especially feel under pressure. They're kind of, okay, what age are you? 50? Well, then you should look 40. And you see that people start to, particularly women working the same clinics, they start to look the same over time. And not because of a concerted kind of plan, but because they're all getting 2%, and they're not seeing the difference themselves, but someone comes from 6 months later and they're 20% different and they're 20% more alike. So it depends on who you surround yourself.
Okay, so the answer to the question of the person who, I'm assuming it's a woman, by the way, can I get my boobs, although I should never assume nowadays, can I get my boobs to get bigger without implants, is yes, you can. You inject fat. I'm assuming you can't just use, fillers that you would use on your lips and stuff, because then they'd only last a few months and then they'd just...
I mean, you'd have to use a huge volume of fillers. So there's a big kind of vogue now for these what's called BBL fillers, where they, for this kind of, Kim Kardashian ass sort of thing, which again I don't understand. You can just eat donuts, and it's
it'll have the same effect.
I don't know why you want a fatter ass, but it's like there may be the same phenomenon. It certainly wouldn't be something I would do, but it's.
But she has implants. I don't know Kim Kardashian, but I'm assuming looking at her bottom. Her rear end, which is quite famous at this stage, that she has some sort of like plastic implants in her bum, has she?
I mean, I haven't been directly privy to it, but it's, there is, I suppose a genetic predisposition to whatever figure she has in the first instance. And so you can get implants for that, but quite often it is by using large volumes of filler strategically placed.
Right.
But that, again, that is a procedure.
Is there not a danger that the filler can move around and your bum just changes shape?
Not so much moving around, but one of the problem with filler is that if you inject filler into an artery, it can act like a clot.
Oh, okay.
And so there have been, serious complications with that procedure. And because particularly if you in an area, let's say like the nose, for instance. Where you have end arteries, much like you have in the heart, that don't really have a lot of kind of channels or tributaries. And so if you stick something in, you block it. Really, there's nothing getting through to nourish that tissue, and that tissue will die. And people can end up losing the tip of the nose, tissue death, etc., etc. So or if it goes into the retinal artery, they can permanently lose their sight.
All right, I'm looking at some of the text coming in. Somebody says, my missus is addicted to this shit. And I think it's mank. You've a way with words, this person. My mates are starting to make comments. Does he ever tell women no? And let's not make this sexist, but let's men or women.
I certainly say no.
Yeah.
And that is both an ethical and a kind of a ban constraint. Because, if you... For me, it is, the long-term thing is you're better off to be honest with people, right? It's even, and I have turned people away and say, listen, I don't think you need anything. I don't think it's going to suit you. Ultimately they'll bring their sister and their mother and etc. back to you. But apart from that, if you do something like that and you send someone out on the street to say, listen, go down to the Beautydoc there on William Street and you can look like me, that's not doing you any favours.
No, because you're not going to look like her.
Better off in anything. A bit by being like, a kind of a dodgy mechanic. You can take them once, but they'll never be back. And so for me, it's better just to make them happy and make them happy for life, and that's a bilateral equation.
Yeah. So I'm assuming then you've had people come into you and say, give me lip fillers. You put them in, you go, oh, I want them bigger than that, and you're kind of going, well, I'm not going to do them bigger than that. That's as big as they need to be.
Sometimes, you'll get in that scenario. I would get someone. I say, I want these big Russian lips. I say, listen, I know someone's great at that. I'll send you on to them. If I'm sure that's what they want, and I talk to them and say, well, and if that's what they want, then I send them off to them. Everyone's happy.
Okay.
I'm just not going to do it.
Somebody wants to know, Niall, can you tell us some stories about the famous people that come in? They're all at it, aren't they? So, I know you can't go into names.
License, I can't do that.
Yeah, but you do have famous people come in, do you?
Yeah, of course. But it's like, generally that's on the back of like, that you're going to be extremely discreet about it. So more so than others. So, and again, they are not advertising, but they might tell their best friend, and then their best friend has a few drinks, and they might tell everyone, and then, and then they come in, it's like, oh, you're doing such and such, and you're like, well, I can't discuss that. But you don't necessarily deny it either,
Yeah, I was just going to say, by saying you can't discuss that, you're not really denying it, are you? By the way, are Instagrammers and influencers important in your business? I mean, do they come into you and they go, I have 10,000 followers, I want my lips done, I'll go onto Instagram and I'll show everybody and I'll advertise you. I'm assuming those people are popular and good for business now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a phenomenon. Get contacted. It's a mixed bag. Some people, have a huge impact in terms of like you get so many people and quite a few people actually that in fact you're not doing it for free and you're not paying them or anything like that. I mean, you'll never pay anyone, but like but if you're doing it free, but you have people who are just so effusive. Like some lovely lady and so TikTok now. Lady who kind of does my social media, she puts stuff on TikTok now. I barely know my password, but like this lady is big on TikTok, and I had so many people come in. I was just like, I basically had to go up, look her up. I remembered her, and I gave her a discount when she came in. But that was just out of, she documents her life, and that was just out of the goodness of her heart,
Yeah.
But it's a mixed bag, and you do get athlete chancers, and
it's good. I'm assuming it's good. It's like everything now. Every business uses social media to drum up business, and I'm assuming these people they do influence other people to get work done. I just, I have a few callers I'm going to go to after the break, by the way, who have had surgery abroad, so we're probably going to get some horror stories. I hope not. But I hope they're not all horror stories. So just finally, in relation to anybody sitting at home thinking, I'm heading off to Istanbul to get my hair done, I'm heading off to Turkey to get my teeth done, I'm going over to get my stomach done or my liposuction or whatever it is, what would your advice be to them right now?
I think, look, it's safe to get it at home. There are people who go over there, they're happy enough. I think really it's about research. People can fake reviews, but it's really about, ask them, look, what are your qualifications? How long are you in this business? Is there someone I think you can actually put me in contact with who is happy with their work? Because if it's got a significant work, probably people, their friends know anyway, say, can I speak to people who are from Ireland, maybe who have been happy with your work? But also to directly ask them what happens if something goes wrong, what is the mechanism back, and also get like a full copy of your notes, paper, full copy of your scan. So if something goes wrong, at least you're not coming to the table with nothing when you're panicking. You're turning up at St. James's at like 1 o'clock in the morning
with sepsis like, after getting an infection. Yeah.
You're having a laugh here, and you're basically saying, I think I had something to do this, and I don't know anything about the procedure. So at least you're coming with something to the table, so that if you do run into serious complications, it can help you.
Well, look, I've only heard good reports about you, David. Anyway, Dr. David Lucy, better known as the Beautydoc. You're on Instagram. You're on all the usual places. Although you do say you don't know a lot about TikTok. You need to get into TikTok, David. TikTok is the thing nowadays.
I'm on it there. I have lots of followers apparently, but.
And you're in St. William Street in Dublin if people want to go. By the way, how much is Botox? The most popular thing, obviously, is Botox. How much is Botox nowadays?
It depends on what you're getting. So the standardly, it's done by area in this country. It's like, so standardly you'd be like 4 is 2 areas, one area pulls up, one area pulls down because speed, that's 3 areas, right? So that would be standard. In men, you have to give about 50% more dose. So it's a little bit more expensive men. So about 50 quid more expensive men. So in women, I charge like $290 for 3 areas, and men I charge $340 and that's purely cost. So, and that would generally last about 4 months. So that would kind of be the ballpark. And there are things that you can do less, you can do more. So that
And
would
how
be-
much are the lips? Because I watched. I don't know. Have you watched The Apprentice? There, it was on recently.
I haven't had TV for 20 years, but it's
Good
like,
man, you're better off. You're not missing anything. But I watched The Apprentice, and there was
have
like
a radio now. I don't need one.
there was 6 women on it and 6 men, and every one of the women had their lips done. It was ridiculous looking. They all looked like Mick Jagger. It was absolutely awful,
But
and
the
they were
thing
all
is, I
sitting
always say, look,
pouting.
if it's done well, people should be able to tell. Like, you can't, you only see bad work.
Well, that's
so,
it.
It's but so lip fitters I charge like $300, depending on what they haven't done. But it's there's variation between places. But the main thing is to find someone who's doing it full time, and find someone who's qualified and has experience. That's really, and also to kind of look at their reviews. I mean, I have 105 star reviews in the last 6 months. So you can look at those, and those things are actually important, to just research and ask questions. It's okay to ask questions and say, listen,
But
sometimes
the word
I
of
say,
warning is don't go to
your
Mary.
face.
Don't go to Mary on Facebook, who does, tans, nails, and Botox while you're at it. You don't you don't
Well,
want
you're
that.
running a bigger risk. It's like, for the sake of saving 50 quid or something, it's really not worth it.
No.
So your face should be worth more than 50 quid to you. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, well, look,
So-
I have to wrap it up. I've run out of time, but listen, thank you very much indeed, and thanks for spending as long as you did talking to us. Dr. David Lucy, he's in South William Street. He's better known as the Beautydoc. You can find him on all the usual socials. Listen, thanks very much indeed, David. I appreciate you coming on the
Pleasure,
air.
man.
Real people, real opinions, real talk radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.